welcome to part 3 of Our Life Now and Forever, the demo. So this time I think we're starting... we're starting school, so yep. Good morning and welcome, students. You glance over your shoulder. In the open doorway was another new person for you to have to know. Her braids did match a few of the kids here, but she wasn't gonna be sitting in the desks with them. She was twice as tall as everybody else in the room. There had to be the teacher, Mrs. Murray. Oh, she looks cute. Her soft brown eyes looked down over you and your neighbours while she tapped a finger against her freckle-speckled face. The pattern on her skirt was almost like stars. Skin. Oh no. The pattern on her skin was almost like stars, if the sky was light at night and the stars were the darker part. Her rosy pink lips parted into a smile. She inclined her chin towards Q. Oh no. Nice to meet you here, Mr. Q Lin. This will be a good year. Yeah. Q stretched the word out as far as it could go and at the same time he opened his arms wide. He turned his head away too. He had the kind of tone your mum would have when she had old work friends over and they'd ask if they could set her up on a blind date. Squeakily cheerful and not real. He was trying to be nice but wasn't trying that hard. Though when his eyes were rolling away, his gaze passed over you and got stuck there. A mischievous grin tugged the corners of his mouth at the sound of his voice. As the sound of his voice went from off-key to chiming. Maybe. Mrs. Murray's pencil-pointy eyebrows lifted. She blinked one time and then her own smile grew. It was shared with you and Tamarack next. Hello, I'm your teacher, Mrs. Murray. Am I right to say that you're Tamarack, Bowman and Reed S? Oh no, I've got a reply. Yes, teacher. Yep. Tamarack bobbed her hands in the air and twisted in place to swing her bag so that it hung behind her back. I'm Tamarack. That is so great. Mrs. Murray spoke sweetly in a way that was just nice. It wasn't surprised or relieved to find out the answer. She probably didn't need to ask to know who you were. Teachers knew a lot. If you'd be so kind, would you mind coming over to my desk over there in the far corner? I'd like to talk to you two before class begins. Okay. Tamarack finally lowered her hands back down to her side. She still bumped her bag around by pushing it up and down with her butt. It clattered loudly and Mrs. Murray pretended not to hear. Yes, teacher. Did we do something wrong already? No. Yeah, take a step closer, curious. Thank you, both of you. She gestured lightly with her hand for you to come and left the doorway. Q turned his head to follow the teacher. More and more of his dark hair clipped your view of the rest of him as she walked away. When you lost sight of his face, there had been a frown on it. After she was really gone, he swung back towards you and Tamarack. Q was smirking then. Good luck out there. He tipped over on one foot and bent his body way down. His other leg kicked into the air. He could balance better than a flamingo. Q slipped a hand under his jacket on the hook, and also under Tamarack's scarf, which was still on top of it, and dug around in fabric. He didn't come out empty-handed. He'd gotten hold of his favourite notebook and pencil. Q slowly lifted his chest up and brought his one hovering foot down to earth again. That whole thing was graceful, but he followed it by wildly waving his notebook goodbye at you. And a paper fell out when he did it. Tamarack squealed, trying to talk but too fast so none of it was real words. She reached her arms to Q graspingly, like she could pick him up and plant him back where he'd dropped his thing. That didn't work either. You stepped away on light feet, carefree, and joined up with one of the groups at the desk. They all raised their heads and waved when he arrived. He was gone, and the teacher was waiting. Tamara squinted her dark red eyes tightly. She directed her gaze towards you because it wasn't like anyone else in the room could understand her. Gave her a look back. Yeah, you snickered. This is gonna be a long, however long it is. Do we pick up the paper? Oh, I was nosy as a child. I would have picked that shit up and looked at it. Yeah, you picked up the paper and peeked at what it said. You made a beeline to the tan page on the dark blue carpet and snatched it off the ground before somebody could step on it, or it could be blown away or get lost in the middle of the forest. Before putting it in your pocket, you read over the top side and flipped it over to see the back. It was a list of food and other things. Maybe he was trying to remember stuff to get when he went to the store with his parents. You tucked it away in your pocket. That was taken care of. Tamara pretended to be a jack-in-the-box like she did yesterday. This time it was by bending on her knees before bouncing straight. Her fluffy locks of hair shook around her round cheeks. Come on, Reed. She skipped off to the teacher's desk, all smiles. You caught up to her in no time and walked the rest of the way side by side. Off in the corner on the other side of the room was the teacher's old dark brown desk. At least the very top of the wood was dark. The inner part was a lot lighter. You could see that from all the tiny cuts and scratches over the surface. It was as far away from the desk as it could be. You guessed that was so she could have these kinds of talks without everybody else hearing the whole thing. Mrs. Murray didn't sit in the cool rolling chair that was behind the desk. She stayed in front and only leaned her back against the top edge. She got to talk to you and Tamara gently because she didn't have to push her voice across a piece of furniture that separated students and teachers. I appreciate you coming to this meeting. I wanted to let you know a little about today, what you can expect from your first day. Why? Well, this class has a unique arrangement of students, but you're the only two who have ever attended this school before. No, you're the only two who have never attended this school before. Everyone else is simply returning after summer break. I'd like to introduce you during roll call later. I want all the other kids to know who you are. Oh. Tamara flicked at the buckles on her bag. They made a clinking sound when she hit them up and a thump when they landed back down. Her gaze moved around too. The meeting wasn't exciting anymore. In the schools I went to, the introductions weren't really like a whole big thing because I moved around a lot as well. So when we went to a new school, it was like it was a one and done over with, you know? But they are very awkward. It's gonna be so awkward and you knew it. People would stare and make faces and you'd have to sit there or stand there like a big weirdo while teachers talked all about you. The face you made wasn't that any teacher would have wanted when they told their students their plans for class. Mrs. Murray could only offer promises over her plans and no proof. I'll make sure it will be alright, the kids will get it. The teacher slid her hands across the desktop behind her and spread her fingers out wide. In a couple of minutes, I'll be telling the class to take their assigned seats. You will have those spots for the rest of the year. I made a seating plan already, but there is a bit of a wiggle room to help you get comfortable if you'd like. Tamara's hands flew from her back to her cheeks. That sounded like a smack. Does that mean me and Reed get to sit together because we're neighbours and friends? Her outburst made you want to cover your face with your hands too, for a really different reason. You were so nervous. Your heart wasn't going to stop running around your chest until the teacher said if you'd get to be with Tamara the whole year or not. A twinkle was in Mrs. Murray's eyes when she finally said that what you were hoping for. You thought she might have paused on purpose to make it more dramatic. Yes, I can put you both next to each other. Woohoo! It made Tamarack explode in celebration. She hopped up on one foot, pulling the other up near her chest, and her arms went in the air. Reed, we're gonna sit together. Yeah. Look at my cute little face. Oh, the little glasses. Okay. We've got something then. Anything else? By your window? Can Tamarack and I sit with Q? I don't know how to pronounce his name. I am so sorry. They were both your house neighbours. Tamarack and Q had to be your seat neighbours too. Mrs. Murray was a really proper lady from what you'd seen. She didn't have one wrinkle on her fancy suit, but creases suddenly appeared around her eyes and mouth after she heard that. The line spelled not again. No, I'm sorry. I'm glad you're getting along with Q, but there were students who wanted to sit next to him last year and didn't get to. It's their turn now. Oh, so he's popular. Your eyebrows went up so high you almost could have lost them. That many people wanted to sit by Q? It was kind of rude to the teacher, but you had to turn your head right around to look at the guy you'd been talking about. He was leaning over the bunch of desks from before and still talking to those kids you didn't know. There was a big smile on every face. You tilted your head back where it came, but not all the way. You only moved it enough to be looking to the side instead at. Oh my god, I cannot read. You only moved it enough to be looking to the side instead at Tamarack. Her gaze was directed straight at you two. She gripped the strap on her bag that was weighing against her chest. Since the day you moved in, it had been just the three of you in your cul-de-sac. Even if the day you moved in was yesterday, it was the same group. You, Tamarack, and Q, neighbours. But you weren't in your neighbourhood anymore. On the outside of the street, Tamarack was exactly like you were, and Q wasn't. You and her were strangers in Golden Grove now. You didn't know people, and they didn't know you. Q has been here forever. And it wasn't only that. You'd only learned something on your first day at school. Q was popular. Something you were going to be popular too. If you had different friends, why did he care about getting to know you? I don't know, it's like Q, he was different too. Friends. Sad. You weren't gonna let that change things. The three of you were still friends. Yeah, I made a lot of friends when I was little. I think I was friends with popular people and people who weren't popular either. Depends what school I went to though. Okay. That's what mattered. Not what other people thought of your friends. Not looking at her didn't stop your teacher from trying to talk to you. Reed, I'm sure once you're in your seat you'll get used to it. Soon you won't want to be anywhere else. And if not, you can come talk to me about it. Yes, Miss Murray. She didn't talk the desk up anymore. It was gonna have to win you over on its own or not. So Mrs. Murray had to wait for you and Tamarack to stop your shared stares of surprise, and then she pointed across the floor to a couple of desks near the back that were side by side. Those are yours. Tamarack's is the closest to the wall, and Reed, yours is the one next to that. Window seat. Can I sit at the window seat? She's so cute. Aww. Tamarack happily sung herself a simple song about her brand new desk. Besides the roll call, there won't be any surprises. It will be a regular, easy first day of class. Thank you for having a chat with me. You can take your seats. Tamarack's cheeks inflated and she pushed a smile between the two balls of air. Okay, let's go read. Alright. The teacher stayed resting up against her desk while you and Tamarack went towards your own seats. Tamarack sent quick, excited glances from the desks, then back to you over and over as you walked towards them. She chatted about how it was going to be so fun being right next to each other and all the things you could do during the year. It was hard not to believe her. She beamed so bright it was like her sparkly golden hair made the sunshine that filled the room. A clap and call came from where you just left. Attention students, class is starting, take your seats. Just like she said she would, Mrs. Murray was beginning the lesson. You were right in the front of your assigned group of desks when she said it. The red classic chair Mrs. Murray had pointed out before was probably really old, but it was brand new to you. You pulled it out from the tables and gave sitting in it a try. Hard, cold, and slippery smooth. And the back part wasn't straight, it bent away from the bottom seat part. It felt like leaning against the top of a shiny slide on the playground. If you weren't paying attention, you might fall right off. Maybe that was the point. That was a way to keep kids focused. Tamarack was right there next to your left side, by the wall and the window just like she wanted. Past her, you could see the rustling treetops outside. With their golden fall leaves all bunched together, they kinda looked like Tamarack's puffy hair, but not as sparkly. She plopped her huge jingling pack on the desk. The actual bag barely fit and she had to bundle up the strap on top so that it wasn't sneaking over into anyone else's workspace. Tips of her rain boots were pressed against dark blue carpet, and she tapped her heels together. It made the shoes squeak. She was excited for her own little place in the room. Reed, we're gonna be right here for the rest of the year. Yeah, we're gonna sit here over 100 times. Tamara passes her hands against the thick fabric of the bag and giggling in time with hits. She stayed pretty busy making a beat. You glanced. Oh no. I cannot read out loud. You glanced out at the room ahead of you, where the important boards and teachers were. Q was there too, in the very first row of seats. It wasn't the same spot he'd been in before when you saw him talking to some people, but those other classmates he was sitting with were just as happy to have him there. He was hanging one of his arms across the top edge of his chair and was settled in so snugly he looked like a heavy blanket that had been thrown over it. He moved his head to the side to rest his cheeks against his stretched out shoulder. Hugh somehow made himself sit even more relaxedly. When that happened, he noticed you behind him. Hugh firmly pressed down his eyebrows and pushed his mouth open a little. He wasn't there when you learned you and Tamarack would be together, and he wouldn't be there with you. Now he found out. He only looked that way long enough for him to notice that you had noticed the expression. Then your friend, house neighbour and not seat neighbour, lifted the corner of his mouth and sneakily waved the hand draped on the seat at you. Q's deep brown-eyed gaze started over to Mrs. Murray, directing your attention to her. His eyes kept moving right into a dramatic roll that went all the way around. It wasn't hard to imagine him saying "teachers, huh?" or something like that. For a minute, you could picture what it would have been like if he had been right next to you. But he couldn't face you forever. It was class time. You were left staring at the tiny ponytail on the back of his head again. It was okay. You were close enough. Mrs. Murray patiently waited for people to get settled. Every seat had a kid in it, and final words were said before the room faded into a short silence. That's when things changed from you being just someone in the room to a student who had to listen to a lesson. Hello class, thank you all for being here today. Welcome to your first day of 5th grade. She gave a round of applause. Normally the people sitting and watching were the ones who clapped for the person standing in the front, but you guessed Miss Murray did things differently. We're going to have a lot of fun this year, and you'll learn a lot too. But also, you're the big kids on campus now, so I'm counting on you to set a good example for the rest of the students here, alright? Yes, Miss Murray. Around half of the class answered her. Part was in a loud cheer and others were bored grumbles. The teacher accepted both moods warmly. Thank you. Let's start with roll call then. She crossed past the desk to get a folder of the little cubbies in the corner. She got there and left her stiff brown jacket behind. The teacher flipped the folder open as she stepped back into the center spot. The cozy sweater made everything about her seem softer. You know the story. I'm going to shout everyone's name in alphabetical order and first name first. When I call your name, raise your hand and say, "Here, Miss Murray, I'm so excited and happy to be at school with you today." That time, almost the whole class started to chatter. There was snickers shared between friends, whiny outcries of "we can't do that," and somebody even booed. "Okay, just here will work, and now I know you're listening." Her soft voice had a jovial kick. She had fun with her job. "Let's begin. Your first name started with R, so it probably would be a while before she'd call you." "Dude, in school I was always at the very back of the register." You gulped. Would it have been better to have it happen sooner or put it off even longer? Who knew? But not having to do it at all would have been best. Mrs. Murray went through each of the A kids, and it just kept going from there. "Culin?" Mr. Culin didn't really raise his hand. He just popped a thumbs up from his laid-back lean. "Hey, Miss Murray." That worked, though, and the teacher moved on. "And then you were next. You knew not just because she said, oh, you knew not just because she was on your first name letter, but because her keen eyes were on you before she even said anything." "Read S?" "Oh, I have options." Okay. Harsh words spread through the cluster of other kids. Before you'd announced yourself, they had no idea you were the person who existed in the world. Now they did. Tisha gave her approval with a nod. It was over, at least for one day. She would probably do a roll call for every class for the whole year. You didn't want to think about that. The roll call rolled on after your turn. "Tamarack Bowman?" Tamarack's arm shot up in record time. It had been wound up and ready for that moment. "I'm Tamarack, that's me." It wasn't exactly what she was supposed to say, but Tamarack got an A for effort. Mrs. Murray continued with the last of the names. Once every person in a stiff red seat had a turn to say they were here, Mrs. Murray gave you and Tamarack a real introduction to the class, the one she had warned you would be coming. It talked about how you just moved to town and what people were supposed to call you and everything. Mrs. Murray must have asked your mum and Tamarack's only notebook to know all that. You were glad when the embarrassing thing was over. That was the end of the not really teaching us anything except names part of class. Mrs. Murray took a paper in the folder out of the flap and moved it over to the other side. "Please take out your pencils and notebooks now. I'll be going over our plans for the year and what will be expected of all my students." Your mum had backed a fresh notebook with perfectly smooth pages that didn't have a single smudge for you to use. You had grabbed something to mark it up if you needed to. It was a plain pencil with an eraser, pencil with a cool eraser, colored pencil, pen, gel pen, glitter pen, crayon marker. Okay, when I was 10, did I have my pen already? Yes, I must have. Pen. You gripped it tight in your hand. Tamarack leaned over her back to be as close as possible. Her eyes were squinted and set right on Mrs. Murray. She started linking her shoes together again, even faster than before. If her legs bent any quicker, she might turn into a one-girl-powered motor and drive the desk around her room. Tamarack was definitely eager to get the information being told, but there wasn't a single piece of pencil or paper anywhere on her desk to take notes. Maybe she only had to listen to know. Over at the other group of tables, Q's face was pressed against his right fist that he had propped up against the desk. He was writing slow, lazy lines with his left hand in a plain spiral notebook. It wasn't his special one. That was your neighbors, and then there was you. Class was easy stuff, school was simple. You did your best to keep up as much as possible, you followed along. Teacher, you couldn't do it anyway. Yeah, class was easy stuff. You went along with it. Mrs. Murray talked about the subjects she'd be covering, upcoming holidays and activities, and the way students would get graded, school rules, and even more. You weren't sure she'd ever stop having new things to tell everyone about until she cut herself off. She said something about when parent-teacher conferences might happen and paused there. Q? Q, you snuck a glance away from the front to him. You couldn't help it. You totally lost that trippy pose. Instead, Q was hunched over a page, and it was from his special notebook then, and he was scribbling in a flurry. Yeah? The answer was as breezy as ever. He didn't try to sound like a student being called out by a teacher. He was polite enough to pull himself up to look at the person speaking to him. Am I going too fast, or is there anything else I can do differently? You've been very uncomfortable. Oh, The pencil dropped and clattered on the desk. Both Q's hands hovered over the piece of paper. He stared at it unsurely, as if he didn't know if it was suddenly too hard to touch or not. For a minute, Q didn't know what to do. He blinked and then he started talking again, slowly, thoughtfully. No, it's alright. He leaned fully against his chair again and threaded his fingers together primly while placing them over the page. From your spot in the back, you could see the edge of the uneasy smile on the side of his face, and even if you couldn't, you could have been able to hear that smirk in his voice. I wasn't writing down what you were talking about. I'll get to that later, don't worry about it. Eyes went wide at his baldness, and a few kids were brave enough themselves to giggle at Q's comeback. Mrs. Murray's usual smile was faint, but it was there. Well, let me know if you change your mind. I will, thanks. She stopped the little break there and tapped her forehead with the back of her hand to get the students' attention once more. Nothing but normal school stuff happened for the rest of the time. It was a lot like your old classes in other places. Golden Grove didn't have a secret way of teaching kids that the rest of the country had never heard of. You figured it was that way, but seeing a regular lesson happen made it clear what you'd been dealing with. And like all the classes you'd had before, that one was over eventually. But before the teacher let anybody get up, Mrs. Murray went all around the room to drop piles of paper on the different groups of desks. She explained how they were stacks of homework sheets and everyone had to take one packet with them and bring it back finished tomorrow. Then she said bye to the students and it was okay to leave. She's a nemesis, okay. It sounded like it wasn't going to be hard, so you didn't care much. Yeah. School meant homework, and that was just how the world worked. Right next to you, the spell that kept Tamarack totally locked onto Mrs. Murray during class broke. The teacher went over to her desk and Tamarack turned to you. She stared at the pen in your hand. Actually, it was the opposite. She was looking at the hand that was holding the pen. I used my right hand too. We're the same again. Yeah, same hands. Tamarack started to hum and get to work unbuckling the two front straps of her bag. Hey, how come we didn't write stuff down during class? She simply kept tugging on the clamps to unhook them, carefree. I wouldn't read any of that. The buckles clicked open. She flipped the top flap over and in went one of the homework packets, closing it all back up for load right after. That was all she had to put away because she didn't take anything out of the bag for the whole class. She pulled the bag closer to her and wiggled herself under the strap. There was only one thing left before she was set. Tamarack bounced out of her chair and the heavy bag settled across her shoulder with a rattle. Wait, so she's not... What does she mean by that? Can she not read? Or... what? Okay, come on, read. She made a dash to the coat rack where her pink scarf was waiting. Before leaving, you remembered to take the homework packet and tucked it away in a pocket of your bag. Nothing else was forgotten either. You put all your things back where you'd taken them from. You even brushed off the stray pencil shavings and eraser bits that wasn't on your side thanks to the other kids on your table group. The desk was all nice and clean when you finished. But as soon as you got up to leave, you couldn't because someone called for you. Hey, Reed. You checked behind you and that was Q, coming up from the front of the class. He was wearing with a piece of tan brown lined paper in his hand. You glared. Wow. Hi. It's good you're here. I've got stuff to say. Though I guess I could have told you even if you had gone. We live in the same neighborhood. It sounded like even Q struggled to wrap his head around the idea that the two of you were strangers about a day ago and now were people who were going to be seeing each other all the time. There was a soft crinkle as Q tapped the edge of his special paper against his right palm again and again. You stopped being able to hear it when Q started to ramble, though he kept doing it. Okay, so this paper. Here's what happened. I was talking to my mum and dad about it yesterday, back when it was still yesterday, and I realized something. He flapped both his arms out wide. Q was acting as blown away as he must have been when he first learned the thing you were trying to explain. Tamarack finding my paper and sending it to you wasn't just some unexpected, unexplainable thing that we wondered about. It was sucky. What? It was? Yes. With drama and emotion, Q whipped his arms up and down in rapid gestures. He needed you to feel what he was feeling, which turned out to be what he imagined you had been feeling before. You got a paper airplane with a message that had your name and everything. That's exciting. It had to mean something. But then it wasn't a message for you. It was an accident. Whoa, that's the biggest letdown I can imagine. He had been flying the page around like it was another paper airplane, but he finally let it rest for a second when his arms dropped. All his bluster became only a sigh. If you were gonna get a note from me, it should have had something to say to you. That's what I thought of when I thought about it more. Oh, now I get it. That wasn't the end of the story, though. It was a prologue. Q sprang back into action and raised his left arm with the page pressed between his thumb and the rest of his outstretched fingers. And so, I've got something for you. He shook the paper in his hand, grinning cheekily. There was no way not to get what he meant, and what that was supposed to be for you. You wrote me a note? That's right. Q swished his paper one more time to bring it down low enough for you to take. You excitedly seized the note from his hand. The page on your fingers was exactly like the one you remembered from the plain one. Somehow tougher and softer than your regular paper, and that was light brown colour. But when you read the message, the words scribbled on it were all different than the first time. Ah, welcome to the neighborhood from Q Lin. This time, actually. That's what was written in big, clear letters. Stars and smiley face crowded out any plain spots that words hadn't covered. Oh, it's very cute. It was careful work. The little extra line on the Q was a fancy curve, and he didn't even draw the stars from the corner to corner. There weren't lines through the middle of them. Okay. The difference between the note Q wanted somebody to see and the one you got by accident was huge. Some blurry things came up past the top edge of the paper. You blinked, distracted, then squinted over the page to figure out what was going on in the room. It was Q, high on his tiptoes. He was watching you read the note, smirking, hands tucked behind his back, and all around very pleased with himself. It's pretty good, huh? Page 2. I remember I had an option like this once and just completely ignored the page 2 part. Yeah, thank you Lord. No, it's great. Thanks for this one, but I don't hate the first note. It was cool too. Okay, thanks. It's forever. Yeah, thank you a lot. He was already standing as tall as he could, but what you said still uplifted him even more through his eyebrows and the corners of his mouth. That lopsided smile grew until it was full to bursting. You're welcome. You gave one more glance at the message Q had written for you. It was still there, welcoming you to your neighborhood every time you saw it. When you looked at Q himself again, he'd finally dropped his feet and hands back to where they normally were. He waited there to see if you were gonna do anything else. Is this what you're writing down, class? Is this what you're writing down in class? I would wonder about this, but I think I'd be too scared to ask. So is this what you're writing down in class? Nope. I came up with that way before. I had other stuff I need to write down. You had more things to write down? What? I can't tell you about all that, but one thing is that I was putting down where everybody's seats were. I had to write it down when I could see people sitting around in their spots. Q talked fast and firm while jabbing the tip of a finger into his left palm just as fervently. He was good at lecturing for someone who was in 5th grade. Was I supposed to do that after class when everyone was gone, Mrs. Murray? No, I have reasons for things. Oh, that makes sense. Good. Even though Q was the last one talking, he abruptly sliced a hand through the air to get what was the conversation out of the way and have it be about something else. But, wait, before I forget, I gotta tell you, I'm impressed, Reed. The first day's gotta be the hardest when you're new, and you didn't even break a sweat in class. His hands were on his hips in a commanding pose as he talked energetically. Nothing was held back. You didn't feel small next to his bright presence, and you didn't think that's what he was trying to do. Q was starting to know you better, and it was making him look at you differently. You could handle it. Thanks. Yep. I didn't do anything, it was you. He closed his eyes and snickered. While thinking some kind of thought, he stretched and curled his fingers to feel out the way his gloves were fitting. Q pinched at the edges to straighten them out better. Anyway, you and Tamarack are in the back next to each other, huh? Mrs. Murray is smart, just sometimes too smart for me. Oh yeah, the teacher said a bunch of people wanted to sit by you. With a huge smile, Q swung his arms around open wide. Yeah, of course they did. He acted like it was obvious, and it kinda was. You already knew. He was popular. The paper crinkled in your hand. You'd been gripping it the whole time. You twisted away to pull the zip on your bag. The welcome message you got from Q went right next to the packet of homework Mrs. Murray had given you. Q giving you a paper reminded you that you had one you could give him to. Oh, yeah, you gave him the paper he dropped before class. Your bag was already open from putting away the newspaper, so you snuck your hand in again. The backpack couldn't be unzipped all the way, or everything would fall out. You only made a hole big enough for reaching around inside. Luckily, the paper from Q's special notebook wasn't anything like the homework from Mrs. Murray. You didn't have to look to know it, you could just tell by touching. But you did have to worry about mixing up the page that was yours to keep and the one that wasn't. You had to stick your face against the cold, bumpy zipper track to read which cottony paper you had before you were sure you'd gotten it right. Then you looked at Q again. You dropped this. That's what you said when you held the paper out to him. It worked like a ticket to a time machine because you saw the exact same thing you did yesterday, with Q gasping, flailing his hands and all of it. It's you. Both his hands smacked against his chest, pressing it back while his head, shoulders and eyes shutted out in total shock. You've got another one? He switched himself so much that the next question could only come out as a bashful peep. That's the paper from yesterday, right? The one Tamarack found. You glanced at the paper for a second and then back at Q. The side with the words was the one you had up. You could read at least some of the message, even if it was a little bent in your hand. But you guessed it was still a shot, and Q didn't want to miss the tiny chance he hadn't been caught losing another piece of the notebook. That was exactly what had happened though. No, it's a different one. Yeah, looks like it. Then his stiffness melted away and Q stood evenly with his head high again. A grin grew too, same as a flower after winter. You know, Reed, your sorcery amazes me. You and him broke out into laughter together. If you really were a sorcerer, you'd do a lot more than make Q lose his papers, even if it was still a good joke. Q swept his left palm up towards you, kind of like how somebody might ask for a dance in a movie. He did fancy moves like that a lot. You placed the page right there where, you placed the page right there like the paper was giving him a low five. Q crossed his right arm over to reach into the left pocket of his pants. Out came his well-worn notebook with the pages that barely stayed stuck inside. He flipped it open with his thumb and positioned the missing paper squarely on top of the rest of the set. He ran his now empty fingers over the tattered side of the book, pressing the corners and edges that had been sticking out mostly back into straight lines. Then Q flicked his wrist to close the notebook, dropped it back in his pockets, and patted the sides of his pants fondly. That's that. You did it. The page made it home. Q didn't have anything else to say then. You could tell since he wasn't looking at you anymore. His gaze was on the move. He'd already seen everything that was there to see in the class that looked like all the other classes. At least you thought so, but he did find something that needed his attention in his mind anyway. Oh, she hasn't left either. Wait right here. I've got another thing to do. After cupping his hands around his mouth, Q called out past you all the way to the other side of the room. Hey Tamarack, get over here. You've got to see this. What is it? What is it? You have to look. Tamarack bounded across the room faster than an Olympic athlete probably. It'll be close at least, because she was already speedy. She did a skipping leap for the last foot before reaching you and Q, and tossed her arm straight up as she stuck the landing. The fringed strands of her pink scarf, which she had securely wrapped around her neck again, had flown up and almost tickled your nose. I'm here. Good, check it out. Q waved urgently for her to come closer with one hand and reached in his right pocket with the other. That wasn't the side he kept the notebook in. He was going for something else. The two leaned in, having a one-on-one huddle. He weren't a part of it, but you could tell what he had by the little glimpse he could catch over his hunched shoulder and the sound of it. It rustled and crinkled, not in a sharp way like leaves, but in a soft, squishy way. Q was holding a wadded-up bag, probably from whatever grocery store Golden Grove had. He kept the bag tightly closed, gripping two sides of the top and keeping his fists pressed together. Then he suspiciously looked side to side. No one else would be allowed to see the treasure hidden inside. Tamarack did it too after him, either to double check or to not be left out, or maybe because she didn't want to miss what he might be spotting. Alright, this is it. Suspense pulled in your two neighbors. Tamarack bit the end of her thumb and totally stopped breathing. There was nothing in the world for them right then except the bag and whatever it held. And finally, before Tamarack could fall over from nowhere, Q parted his hand and stretched open his unusual gift wrapping. Mouth open, eyes wide, Tamarack gawked down into the bag. You figured she'd go wow or something, but she just scanned whatever it was up and down with the same eager expression. It was possible she was so blown away her face had gotten stuck like that. That turned out not to be true, because she eventually saw enough for a reaction to slowly begin rumbling inside. First it was the edges of her lips wobbling, then her eyelashes trembling, and finally her brows pinching fiercely. Tamarack snapped her head up and glared straight into Q's awaiting smirk. That's trash. Huh? What's in the bag? A tiny bubble of a sticker popped out from Q's mouth. Then there was another even louder one. The laughs kept bursting bigger and bigger until he was shaking so hard that whatever was in the bag almost bounced out. It's trash. What? Yeah, it is. I said so. Being heard over Q's giggling fit could have been could have been a problem, but Tamarack was entirely okay with shouting. Mrs. Murray looked over at the commotion from her fancy teacher's chair. She still had that folder with the roll call paper and the class schedule open. Maybe there were no rules once class was out. Maybe this kind of thing was normal with her students because she didn't tell any of you to quiet down. She just went back to her job stuff. By the time you focused on your neighbors again, Q had started to calm down. Q shook his head and wiped a tear from the corner of his eye. Then, through heavy breaths, he gave a wisecracking answer. I didn't say this was something you'd want to have, just that you should see it. Why would I see your trash? She asked him crossly while crossing her arms to go with it. Q gathered the handles into one hand and swung that arm up near his chest so that the bag hung over his shoulder. The pose would have fit best for someone modeling a purse 5 times more expensive than any of your mum owned, and she had really nice ones for work, not a plastic bag full of garbage. I have reasons. I've always got reasons. What are they? The question was cautious, wary of any other tricks Q might pull. The curiosity was clear in her voice. Being presented a bag of garbage was okay as long as it had some kind of secret. Well, he paused to rearrange his face into something more serious and nodding thoughtfully. Even though me losing that paper was an unexplainable mystery, I was thinking about how you just got to this town and are already having to pick up other people to keep the forest clean. That's not fair. Still, speaking as a wise mentor, Q used his other hand to gesture tellingly at the windows. So, I decided to go back outside yesterday and check the forest for litter. This is all the stuff I got so far. He really did have his reasons, and it was exactly like he'd done with you and the note. Q imagined what Tamarack had probably thought or felt from what happened yesterday, and when it seemed like he could be sad, he did something about it. Tamarack sucked in a gasp of air and let it out as a squeal. Really? You cleaned the woods? I did. All of this went from being on the ground into my trash bag. Wow, that's so nice. She did wow about it after all, and she also kicked her feet out one after the other in a happy little dance. Her bag jostled along with her moves like a partner. It was your good idea first. That could have been a humble, but he cocked his chin and grinned, so pleased with himself that it wasn't really anymore. Tamarack was too giddy to care or notice. Thanks, Q. You know what? It's not my conversation, I don't think, so you just smile along with them. The little trio of you, Tamarack, and Q stayed together, reunited over by the desks, while the room became more and more empty of anybody else. After a while, besides you three, there was only the teacher in the class left. It was empty enough and quiet enough you could hear the doorknob twist and click. That was all that happened though. You figured someone would come in. You checked behind you, the door was open a crack and a person peeked through. From the teeny bit you could see, the person was a kid, or maybe a short grown-up. They were only half as tall as the door and they were hiding behind it. It definitely wasn't your mum coming to get you. Mrs. Murray was still flipping through a million papers, but she called that from her desk. It's okay, you can come in, class is over. Then the door got shoved all the way open and bumped into the wall. After trying not to get noticed, being called out that way made whoever it was confident. They stood in the doorway and put their hands over their hips. The hair on their face was a helmet of sunshine, orange, shining and flaming out in rays everywhere. The person walked right in without looking at what they were seeing. It wasn't the way you or Tamarack came into class, it was the way Q had, the way somebody who had been here before had. But this wasn't their classroom. None of the students you saw the whole day were this person. In a new school, in a whole new town, you would have been more amazed it was somebody you did know. Even though that was true, you almost thought you had met this stranger. The kid's soft brown eyes itched at your brain. We were sure you'd seen those exact kind of eyes somewhere else. Is he the son of the teacher? It was especially hard to figure it out when their gazes weren't aimed at you. It was gone to the front where the teacher was. Oh, you remembered. Seeing a new kid at Mrs. Murray made you think of the matching card games you had to play in school when you were little. You just won by flipping over 4 identical chestnuts. The person with eyes like Mrs. Murray ran to her past the counting carpet and behind the desk. They threw their arms around her legs in a hug, squeezing her knees together. Your teacher gently brushed those sunbeam strands until the kids tilted their heads back up to smile at Mrs. Murray with a toothy grin. Hi. Hello, Sir 7th grade. Did you have a good first day? Darren. Wow, Darren. Okay. Sir 7th grade, or Darren, or both, gasped and let go before smiling even wider. Q. He darted out from the desk just like that. Mrs. Murray watched him go, rubbing out the spots on her pants that got squished. She was for sure his mum. Not only because they hugged or because of their eyes, Mrs. Murray wouldn't have let a normal student get away with not answering her questions. And you were right. My mom is your teacher? Darren's voice came out bright and loud and with a big laugh, though the sound was kinda crackly too. He had so much to express to the world, words could barely keep it all together. Hugh's own sparkling giggles joined in. He opened his arms all the way out, not holding anything back. I know! When Darren crossed the room, he snuck his own hand straight ahead, palm up. Hugh flipped his arm down and over to land a low 5 smack. It was a powerful hit, but they were both protected by gloves. Hugh shrugged again, not feeling the sting. This year's gonna be tough. Boys, inside voices please, and personally, I'd say my lessons are fair. Right, yeah, sorry Mrs. Murray. Sorry Mum. Darren lifted his fuzzy black earmuffs off his head and, using hands covered in fuzzy black gloves, he was in a classroom to stay, and he'd have to be able to hear quieter words better without that too. For the first time, Darren noticed that there were two more people in the room. That made his smile flatten. You'd expected that you would see new kids today. Darren didn't think about that. He tried to figure out what to do, or think, or feel now that it had happened. Tamara skipped saying who she was so she could jump right into Darren's face on her tiptoes. As far as kids went, Darren was as tall as Tamara was short. Mom, you said she's your mum? A teacher is your mum? It didn't matter that Q talked about Mrs. Murray having kids before you got there, or that a lot happened to show that Darren was definitely her son. Having the kid of a teacher in front of her was too unbelievable for Tamarack. And that made Darren decide what to think about this meeting. He didn't like it at all. Aw. His face soured, and he backed away from Tamarack without thinking, like a giant fluffy bumblebee was coming to get him. Tamarack didn't let him get far away from her. Oh yeah, you want to see this wasn't good. Someone should probably do something. Someone not you though. Don't follow Darren like that. Q was totally serious with the idea. It wasn't a rule, it was a law. Tamarack listened to it better than if it came from an actual teacher. Oh. Tamarack deflated to stand like normal again and stopped scurrying towards Darren, like a little bug. He still didn't stop staring at her. Darren was too afraid of what she might do next to look away. The whole thing made Q sigh. It was an accident though, because he sucked in another breath super fast later. Then he smiled again like it never happened. Oh, hey, everybody's got to meet each other for real now. We do? Yeah, we do. He used his tiptoes and smoothly... He used his own tiptoes and smoothly twirled around to shift from Tamarack's side to Darren's. This is Mr. Darren Murray. Q hooked an arm around Darren's stiff shoulders. The warm embrace got Darren all soft. He melted over Q and their heads bumped together. The two were as close as could be. He's my friend, and 12, 2 years older than us. Q proudly put up a peace sign that probably just meant to. Remember that road right out from a cul-de-sac? Darren lives there. His house is the yellow one with a dark brown fence. We're almost neighbours. That's how we know each other. Yeah, the big hill. I know that. You'd pass a lot of homes on your way out to school. You guessed people had to live in them, but you always figured that you would meet a person before seeing where they lived. It was kind of weird thinking you'd gone by his place before you ever knew who Mr. Darren Murray was. Q tilted his face so he was nose to nose with the boy down the street. That's what I've got to tell you. These are my new neighbours. What, both of them? I thought only one kid was coming. The poor boy was more confused than ever. Tamarack could shock people even when she didn't try to. Q came to the rescue. His arm slid off Darren's shoulders to pat him soothingly on the back instead. Both of them. Q used his other hand to nudge her finger towards the girl of many surprises. That one is Miss Tamarack Bowman. Granny is her actual grandma. She lives in the grey house now. It was easier for Q to explain what happened now. If Darren had been there yesterday, he could have seen Q's flurry when he found out Tamarack was there. Is that what you had to do to sound smart? Act like you always used something to people who couldn't tell the difference? Maybe it was just a Q thing. It did work for him. Darren listened to his friend's wisdom, amazed. And that, like a tiny showman in front of an audience with one person in it, Q uncrossed his fingers and held his open palm towards it. Is Miss Reed S. Okay, she's a girl. Yep, definitely. She is the one who moved into that empty middle house with her mum. We all met yesterday. In the real world, Darren had to look down to see Q. It was a plain fact. He had to look down on every kid in your grade. But in the shine of his dipped eyes, you could be tricked into thinking Darren was looking up at Q. That's how much the older boy admired the younger one. The light went away when Darren glanced over to the two people Q had introduced. All that was there then was uncomfortable skepticism. Hi. You're pretty sure that there was nothing weird about what you did, but Darren squinched his face at the attention. Hi. Wow, lovely introductions, guys. Q chuckled at that, playfully shoving his pal in the chest. Tamarack flapped a hand fast in a wave. It beat like the buzzing wing of a bee. She kept being like that around Darren, but he didn't think it was on purpose. Hi, Darren. His features stayed squished. The awkward way Darren was with people still didn't get Tamarack to back off, or even slow down. She had thoughts that needed to be said. You're both wearing orange sweaters. Tamarack stopped her fluttering by clasping her hands together over this important revelation. Darren curled his fingers too, gripping tight around the earmuffs he was holding. She hadn't said it teasingly, not even the silly kind of teasing Q did, but was bothered by it for some reason. Yeah, we both like orange. It was a short answer and a very serious one. The whole time Darren hadn't said one word in response to Tamarack until now. No one she had asked about his mum or said hi. Talking about the same coloured clothes, though, couldn't be ignored. Orange is good. One of the top colours. Q got into whatever was going on, nodding wisely. Well, do you know what my favourite colour is? How would I know that? Because I think it's pretty obvious. For the second time, he gestured over to Tamarack, but not just any part of her. Q pointed towards her mop of sparkly hair. It's golden. That's the best colour there is. That's the best colour there is. Well, that's what? It was cool to learn Q's favourite colour. Yep. You were getting to know each other. Ooh. My favourite colours are purple, pink, red, yellow and orange. That's a lot of favourites. It's probably about half the colours there are, but alright. Wait, and also, every colour Reed likes is my favourite too. Let's go green, whoa! Now you know what both of them liked. That was perfect. Compared to Tamarac's shouting, Darren responded with a peep. He still didn't want to talk to her, but misunderstandings about colour rankings shouldn't be made either. Red is my real favourite colour. Orange is still cool. At that point, everybody had talked about colours they liked except for you. Okay. I think my top favourite colour was definitely green, but my second favourite colour was definitely purple as well. Would I say something? Do I say something? I did like all colours though. You had a colour you thought was best too. It was... Let's go green! Yeah! Cranberry? Green! Q took his rusty notebook out of his pocket. A pencil came with it. He flicked the pages open and began to scribble right there in the middle of the room during a conversation with people. Why are you doing that? School is over. I'm writing down your favourite colours. I will remember later. The question was answered, and it completely confused her. It made sense to you that she didn't get it. Tamara didn't write stuff down even when class was happening. Okay. Yep, cut off her own planned reaction. Confused by normal things and confusing to normal people, that was Tamarak. You're using your little hand. The left one? Yep, that's my good hand. Wow. Tamarak ran out of words to blurt out, and Darren didn't want to do anything on his own, and not with you either. It had to be Q. So the three of you waited there as the scratchy sound of Q's handwriting went on. The more letters Q added to his notebook, the more his friend shifted uncomfortably. Hey Autumn, you're coming to my house today, right? Yeah, I am. That was the third quick and direct answer Q gave while busy with his task, but it had a big impact on Darren. He smiled, relieved. The promise made up for all the stuff Darren hadn't enjoyed since he walked into the classroom and had two new people become a little part of his life. Making a long dash across the paper, probably to underline something, Q finished off his note to himself and his reply to Darren. Now that Reed and Tamrak are here, I've got to make sure that they get to the neighborhood. Oh no. Now that Reed and Tamrak are here, I've got to make sure they get to the neighborhood. But I can do that and get to your house. The one brown book and the pencil were tucked into Q's pocket. He didn't watch what he was doing. You did, and this time no papers fell out. It's not just gonna be me and Darren, you know. One more is coming too. We've got plans. It's been worked out for weeks that we'd get together after the first day of school. Q had people to see that afternoon, kids other than you. That was alright, because you were sure you'd be... Oh no. That was alright, because you were sure there'd be time for you and Q to hang out later. He wouldn't completely forget about you. Thinking about it made it that way. Darren was sort of like you. He was friends with Q too, and didn't want changes to change that. There was room for all of you. And because of that, Darren, can you go get that guy? He's gonna be standing around outside not knowing where to go. You can bring him right into the room. Darren sunk his neck deeper into the tall collar that surrounded it, trying not to be called on in class after it was already too late. I don't wanna. His voice had gotten even more raspy when he spoke then, Every bit of Darren protested that idea. Oh, come on, you're the fastest out of everybody. Q, on the other hand, was bold and brave. He sincerely sung Darren's praises to encourage his friend, though, more quietly, added a verse of his own success. With running anyway, on bikes I'm the best. Did you know you've got a mountain bike? It has silver paint splatters and the tires have these big treads. It's so fast you'd be amazed. But besides, we can't both go. Tamara and Rita here. Do you want to stay with them by yourself while I go get him? Darren's eyes closed and he grimaced. If he was looking, he wouldn't have been able to stop himself from glancing at you and Tamarack. You could tell since that's where his not seeing face turned. And he didn't want to do either. If he couldn't even handle seeing you both too closely, staying along with you and Tamarack didn't seem achievable for Darren. Q knew it. I'll go. He placed Amos back on his head as if he was donning armor before a battle, resigned but resolute. Cool, see you. Yeah, bye. Bye. As Darren sprinted through the door, he doubted he'd be following the no running in the hall rule. Mrs. Murray was still reading over her teacher's stuff, so she didn't put a stop to it, but Darren should have followed them even if no one was watching. Tamarack's focus was set on the action. When that was over and even Darren's bright white vest couldn't be seen, she snapped her gaze towards too. Q. I've lost my ability to read, oh no. She was eager, ready to learn more about the boy whose name hadn't even been said yet. In school, in friends, in everything, Tamarack always wanted answers. He wanted about it too. Q began to tell you about his friend, even though no one asked anything about him. Your and Tamarack's faces had been enough to get Q going on it. This kid you're gonna meet isn't like other kids. He's mature. Mature rolled off of Q's tongue slowly, importantly and with a fake accent. He didn't know what kind, but when he thought a little longer, Q much more quickly added some more details. And not mature actually, about some stuff. No, I really likes him, but I do and you might too. Oh, guess what? He doesn't go to our school or Darren's school. He goes to a totally different one that costs money because it's for rich people. Those are actually real. You figured out what accent Q had been doing, a wealthy person's accent, like from one of those movies with millionaires. What? Really? Does he have to wear a uniform? I wish I could go to school like that. He goes to private school. It's terrible. I quite know that Q's shadowing. Okay. Those pieces weren't enough for Tamarack, who started getting impatient as soon as Q stopped describing the mystery man. She flapped the end of her scarf up and down. Q could have guessed what that meant, even if he wasn't really good at figuring out those kinds of things. Waiting is boring, but it's worth it. After this, you two will have met all the best kids in the whole town. Well, almost all of them. Almost? Tamarack zeroed in on that one word. None of the other 1, 2, 3, 4 words didn't matter. Q only lifted his shoulders and hands, at a pretend loss. It was like saying, who knows? I do, but I'm not gonna pretend I don't. Q was playing games with her again. Oh, you'll see. Maybe. Tamarack went from boredom to frustration, and that's where she was stuck. Q cut off his details again. We were pretty sure that was better for her though. Neither Q or Tamarack were sure what to say next. You were the same. The three of you glanced from one face to another. Expressions flitted between encouraging smiles and curious peering. Until eventually the door was flung open. Darren hadn't stopped to check if it was okay that time. He had a job to do and he had done a job well done. Darren wasn't alone. Their entrance was a funny scene. Behind Darren's striking colours and intense steps was a new boy. The stranger came along unconcerned, dressed in a muted colours. His hair colour almost could have been called black, though dark grey was probably more right. He had black pants that didn't match perfectly with the shade of his head. But there was something about him that made a strong impression. Tamrak, Q and Darren too had lots of energy that radiated out of all of them. But this boy didn't have a spirit in his hands, legs or body. His fire was concentrated all in his dark brown eyes. Whatever he looked at came against the total force of being. It made him unignorable. And that part of him was so noticeable that it took you a minute to see he had a birthmark on his neck and that his smile was actually a smirk. From a full class to only 3 students left, to 4 people, and now you were up to a group of 5. People kept coming and going that afternoon. I didn't know what to think. All your thinking was cut off by a shout from Q. Along with that, he punched a fist into the air to welcome his returning champion and the Found Prince. Yeah, you made it. Darren and the boy he brought, given the impression of opposites when they actually. Darren and the boy he brought had given the impression of opposites when they first came in. What they had in common became clearer when they smiled the very same way at the reunion. They both liked the other one of them, and they both liked Q. That's all that mattered. That is a lot of people, hello. The two went to Q's side, Darren on his left and the other on his right. Formation of the trio was perfectly smooth. All of them were already aware of where they stood in the group. So, this is my friend. He's cool as long as you tell him when he's being dumb. The boy had been the most collected person you'd seen in town, besides the teacher, and Q just called him dumb as soon as he got here. That was kind of incredible. But Q didn't mean it in a mean way, and the new arrival hadn't even blinked when Q said it. They were friends, and the insult expressed as much affection as the hug Q and Darren shared earlier. Hello, it's nice to meet you. My name is Baxter. Baxter? Baxter greeted you and Tamara casually. It was effortless for him to say polite words, though they didn't come with a lot of meaning behind them. Darren was 12, and he was taller than all of his friends, but you could have believed he wasn't that old until Q said so. Nobody needed to tell you Baxter was older than you. No one had told you, but you still knew. More than any kid, Baxter reminded you of teenagers, ones who had thought they were smarter than not only anyone younger, but adults too. He had the kind of unquestioned confidence. Even the way he stood there looked more grown up than everyone else. That's right. Q put on his snooty voice again and did a curtsy to show his mock respect to whoever the boy was. I am terrible at reading out loud, oh no. Q put on his snooty voice again and did a curtsy to show his mock respect to whoever the boy was that he was about to introduce. He is Mr. Baxter Ward, the oldest son out of all of us. You knew it. Meanwhile, Q dropped the accent because he wasn't talking about Baxter anymore. And this is Miss Reedess and Miss Tamrak Bowman. You're a handsome guy, wow. Hello. One corner of Baxter's mouth was already up. It had always been up, but he lifted the other end too so he could probably smile at you. Reed, that's a nice birthmark. You're lucky to have one. Oh, I forgot I put on my character. You thought no one had more random compliments than Tamrak. Baxter might change your mind. Thanks, I think so too. For a second, Baxter appreciated the mark on your on you in the show of mutual birthmark owner respect, and you were basked in that. You're welcome. Hi. Tarak's normal bubbliness popped right after she said hello. Are you actually rich? She said doubtfully, with her hands on her hips and her face tilted intently. It added more to her wondering than what she actually said. What would a rich person be doing there? Shouldn't he be doing something else? Shouldn't kids like you or her weren't doing? You try to imagine what the other thing might be. Maybe sitting at the head of a table longer than this whole room, or dancing in a shiny ballroom wider than your house. Darren's face twisted in the center and tightened around the edges. He wanted to laugh, and he stopped himself from doing just that. Yes. Baxter said he was a rich kid as plainly as he could if you asked if it was Monday or if he had a hat on his head. He can prove it too. Baxter lives in a huge mansion high on the mountain. He does? He does. Suddenly, the table and ballroom of your fantasy felt a little more real. Having the huge mansion come up without him needing to say so curved Baxter's smile more than it already was. He didn't have to brag, his house spoke for itself. Or rather, the house got Q to speak for it, and that was the best brag of them all. If I like the two of you, maybe you'll get to visit. If I like you? Q's words had shot up in a high pitch and rang with humor. He threw his hands out in disbelief and to be careful not to hit one of the multiple people around him. Baxter, you show it to everybody who will come by. Q knocked Baxter's arms with his elbow, and that was on purpose. A friendly nudge to go along with the rest of his light-hearted jabbing. His smile beaming at Baxter, his eyes dancing over towards you and Tamarack. Q declared in his stuffiest voice a reply that was, to Q, a more accurate picture. Please come see my big cool house. Why would I even have it if no one was going to see it and think it was big and cool? That's him. Q needed to pause to steady himself before he finished what he was talking about. But it is a really cool house. I would show it off if it was mine. Q had to be honest about his friends and himself, when it was flattering and when it wasn't, and it ended his show generously. Baxter said nothing, and he didn't laugh. He just glided a knuckle along the edge of his swooping bangs. The strands curved with the motion, then slipped right back into the normal resting spots. His smoke didn't drop out of place either. With so much not being different, it was easy to tell that his cheeks turned pinker. Q had sort of made fun of Baxter. Even if it was a joke, if Baxter was going to blush, you would have thought he was embarrassed because of the teasing. But no matter how you looked at it, nothing about the older kid's expression was shy or uncomfortable. He was calm as ever, maybe even a little happier than before it happened. Anyway, Baxter's introduction was over. Q had decided. Now that everybody is here, I've got something very important to say. Though he said everybody, Q's attention was squarely on you and Tamarack. For the pause for dramatic effect as Q smiled knowingly. You and Tamarack, I hereby invite you to join our club. What? Oh, I don't think he likes us. Oh no. Darren shouted out like Q had just announced he was getting married next week at 10 years old. Not so loud, please. The gentle scolding was way more startling than Darren's yelp. You'd forgotten Mrs. Murray was still at her desk. She was so quiet and so much like her teacher, she fit as naturally in the classroom as the whiteboard or globe. Things that were there and should be there, but you didn't think about it. While you got a reminder, Baxter had never known. Oh, hello, Miss Murray. Nice to see you, Baxter. Darren zipped his lips. He had to settle for silently pinching his brows and pouting. Q was definitely the leader of the pack, wasn't going to let his words on this decision be questioned. He folded his arms in disapproval. First his mom, then his friend, Darren wasn't having the best moment. Q couldn't stay firm for long though. Instead, he thought of his club and smiled. Me, Baxter and Darren are a group. We go all around and having fun. We're practically famous in town. Yeah, me, you and Baxter do. Quietly, firmly, not yelling, Darren pointed out the members again as if it meant something. Those are girls. Oh wow, okay. Darren's glance flicked to you and then Tamarack for a single second. So it did mean something to him. After this whole time, with Darren acting so weirdly with you and Tamarack, you heard why. He was a boy who didn't play with girls. At 12? Seriously? Come on now. It's a boys' club. Darren gestured around the semicircle of kids to bring attention to the boyness of the collection. How can we be a boys' club if we're not all boys? He whined in a whisper. Even if you and Tamarack and Baxter were right there, Darren was trying to keep the conversation between him and Q alone. Unfortunately, it was Q he was talking to, and Q made extra efforts to include the two of you. He freely giggled at the problem he'd been presented. Pfft, Darren, your mom's a teacher, and guess what? Q gave a little look over his shoulder towards his possible new group mates. His dad, he's also a teacher at a different school. With a slow shake of his head, Q smugly chided his friend. And you didn't even know problem solving. Listen, okay, so I'm a boy and it's my club. That means it's a boys' club. What's the issue with that? He didn't get an answer, though Q didn't expect to. Darren could only gawk as if he'd witnessed a magic trick. Q had taken a black heart card from Darren into his fingerless gloves and into his fingerless gloved hand, and when he revealed it again, it had transformed into Red King. You wondered if Q was a sorcerer all along, and he only said you were one to cover himself. He had a way with words and with people. You and Tamarack being you hid wasn't what gave Q an advantage. He was like that no matter what. Baxter chuckled. Please, audience member of the event, and then he shrugged with his hands on his pockets. I don't mind if they tag along, as long as they can keep up. Great. Baxter's agreement was given freely, and Q took Darren's acceptance of his idea as a sure thing, even if he hadn't exactly gotten there yet. He expected you and Tamarack to see it too and put the choice in your hands. That was the only question. So, what do you think? No thanks, I don't want to. For all of Q's feats of conversation wizardry, it was equally amazing how simply Tamarack could defeat them simply by not taking an interest and saying so. That was actually the second time Q invited her to play with him and his friends. Yesterday, she said maybe. Today, she said no. Darren suddenly frowned more. He never wanted her, but was offended she wanted him to. Baxter only smirked harder. He already had friends. Being turned away by strangers didn't make a difference. Q was disappointed, by Tamarack not considering it, and by his friends' unwelcoming attitudes. No one seemed to care like he cared, even when he tried his best to get everyone to get along. His expression wasn't unhappy enough for Tamarack to realize with shock the impact she'd had. Thanks for reminding me. I like you, Q. I'm not sure I like those other kids. Straight to their face. Say it. Yeah. Two bewildered snorts and one laugh followed that attempt at comfort. Baxter was the one who laughed. I don't know. Because I don't like that guy. Blonde hair. Oh, I don't know. Oh, did I pick that? No. Okay, what do I pick? That's so crazy. I wanna save there and keep. Oh no. I think I don't like Darren. Like, I probably ignore him, but thing is like in the club when you're hanging out, it's not. Oh no. Okay. He did like Q, but Darren made the club sound terrible. Q saw your lack of certainty as better than Tamarack's outright rejection. There was hope, and his smile began to grow. Nobody has to join, but you'll probably regret it for the rest of your life if you don't. It's the coolest club there is. And Reed, Tamarack, don't listen to Darren. I'm sorry he said that about you being girls in our group and that being bad. Darren's gaze fell guiltily, and he didn't finish whatever he was going to say. He may not have wanted you and Tamarack to join, but Q did. Being the reason it didn't work out was an unintended betrayal of his friendship. Darren does not know how to talk to girls or how to act around them. I think the only ladies he can say 10 words to are his mum and Tamarack's granny. Q. Q tossed his hands up completely unapologetically. You thought of a phrase you heard your mum use before. Don't shoot the messenger. I don't know. That's what I noticed. But it doesn't matter anyway. You can't live your life like that. You're a big kid, Darren. What if Tamarack and Reed looked up to you because you're much older and wiser? Are you not even gonna be able to say hi to them? I said hi, didn't I? You said hi to Reed, not to Tamarack. She greeted you. But she was too close, I know. How about you say hello right now? It's not too late. Yeah. Okay, I feel bad about saying I don't like him now. Whatever. Tamarack was instantly in for that idea. She glanced upwards into Darren's eyes, grinning expectantly, and swishing her shoulders side to side. Say hi. It was hard to tell if she didn't realize she was giving Darren a hard time, that it was more to him than normal hello, or if that was the whole plan. But either way, Darren could do nothing except stare hard at Tamarack's smooth jig. Q, this is embarrassing. Yeah, it is. For you. You can't treat girls like that just because they're girls. Darren groaned through his clenched teeth. Q, Darren and Tamarack, not one of them were budging. Once the low voice came from the area around Darren, it wasn't actually him, it was behind him. Hello, I think your scarf is so nice, Tamarack. Hello, Reed, you have such great glasses. What? Darren couldn't stay quiet for long. His mum had given up reminding him. I hope you like my earmuffs too. Darren's run around in a flurry, but the perpetrator had already breezed back to Q's other side. Baxter stood there, self-satisfied and silent, like he had been there the whole conversation. He may not have seen it with his own eyes, but Darren knew it was Baxter. He had a pretty distinct voice, and it was quite as if anyone else could have done it. It was a pleasant answer to Tamarack's ears, no matter who said it. She giggled as she toyed with her nice scarf. Do you really like that? The real Darren turned away, uncomfortable, with a face pinker than the accessory in the question. Okay, I feel kind of bad for him. I like your earmuffs. Let's smooth out the tension. Me too. Darren tucked his head into his vest as much as he could. The main part of his face that you could still see were his eyes, which had gotten huge and gone from defiant to shy and maybe a little hopeful. It reminded you of a baby turtle peeking out from its shell for the first time. You guys. Hugh had lost hold of the situation. He viewed it from the outside the same as he might have done while watching toddlers tumble around on a playground. You know I didn't invite you just anybody to the group. The reminder was meant for Darren. He sent an explanation you're on Tamarack's way next. Before it was me and Darren since we were babies, and then a couple of years ago there was Baxter. It had only been the three of us since then until right now. Yeah, it has been us. So why did he need to be part of the club? It's good you asked. Reed broke into my backyard accidentally and took me on a crazy investigation about paper airplane. And then she got here a day ago and oh no, I cannot read. And she got here a day ago and she's already looking out for me. Normally I'm the one doing that. And Tamarack was the one who made a paper airplane for a stranger because it would be fun. She's the type of kid who hides for who knows how long in a pile of leaves so she can jump out to spook you. What's not to like about that? Lastly, the 3 of us are all neighbours. That's gotta count for something. Even if it doesn't, what were you thinking we'd do? Run away from them when me and you and Baxter are in the club in the cul-de-sac? Try to make Tamara and Reed leave their own street? No, we would be friends and hang out together. It makes no sense not to let them join the club. Q's debate speech roused Tamarack. Her fists were clenched and her expression was full of vigor. You weren't sure she wasn't inspired to join Q's club. It straightened your bond as neighbours and only made her flimsy connections to Darren and Baxter more obvious. Darren wordlessly put extra space between him and the shaking girl. Baxter smiled at Q, supporting his friend while being totally indifferent to the results for the effort. When it came to yourself, Q's description of why he thought you should be a member. Yeah, made you consider accepting the invitation after all. He was nice to you, and Q was right. If Darren and Baxter were going to come to that neighborhood where you lived a lot, it would be nice if they didn't try avoiding you. Q got the sense of his audience's mixed reactions. Instead of a full house roaring with applause, it was more like seeing a mostly empty theater with one person clapping in the back row. He worked with it. Well, they haven't been here long, and I know that they're better than you two guys know them. And the same goes for Reed and Tamarack. They know me better than either of you. It's different for me. I like all 4 of you. People can join later, and neither of you have to be an official member to do stuff with us. I'm just letting you know what's up. A lot of things bothered Darren, and he showed it. Baxter so far took everything like it was nothing. Q went up and he went down, but always tried to get back up by the end. That was the boys' club. Q was still Q, and I don't like Darren. He's okay. He's nothing special. I don't hate him. He can have his opinions, I guess. That Darren kid was okay. Also, sweet little rich boy. Yeah, he's kind of cool and mysterious. Big mansion on top of a hill. Even though you didn't want to be in it yourself, that club had been a lot of fun to meet, and you'd get to see them around probably a lot. A tap-tap sound marked the end of the meeting. It made you think of a hammer hitting a podium in very important and official gatherings. But it was actually Mrs. Murray as she trained her papers against her desktop. Her teacher placed them down in a neat pile as she rose to her feet. It's time to go, everyone. I'm leaving and I can't stay here alone. Am I giving everyone here a ride? Her gaze was squarely on Q and Baxter with that question. Or would you like me to call your families? It was you and Tamarack who got a look with that one. The first kid already with an answer was Tamarack. She yelled out with no hesitation. I'm okay. Falling off the Tamarack, though definitely not talking to her, piped Darren. He and his friends already had plans, but he sheepishly looked to his mum for permission to go through with it. Q and Baxter can come with us, can't they? Right off, she nodded, and her son smiled and relaxed. Mrs. Murray held up one finger and added a note before anyone got ahead of themselves. They can't stay all night. I'll need to take them both home before dinner. All right. Thank you for letting us visit. Yeah, thanks. What about you, Reed? Oh, I'm fine. That's good. Reed, come to my house. Tamarack pumped her arms like the dark blue carpet was water underfoot, and she needed to row through the indoor pond. We can walk back together. On your own? No, together. And you can meet Omi and Opa when we get there. I had to ask my mom. Yeah, you can't really go to a stranger's house without, letting know your parents. Yeah. Alright. Well, how about we finish packing now? On it. At the teacher's suggestion, gathering outdoor clothes, checking inside and under the desks, and looking through bags to see if the most important possessions were still there was all done. Not a single glove would be missing or one pencil out of place if Mrs. Murray could help it. During the final sweep of the room, there was an eager knock at the door. Who is this? Mrs. Murray took long strides, reaching the door far sooner than any of her students could. Then it was opened. You saw your mom framed by dozens of coloured paper leaves taped around the frame. It was great. She could see your new teacher in class and everything. Hi, I'm going to assume you're Mrs. Murray? Yes, but Shannon is fine. And you're Mrs. S? Right as well. I'm Opal. Reed is my daughter. It's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for coming to pick up Reed. You stopped listening in their conversation as the two grown-ups chatted about each other and little of you. Darren wasn't as polite. He sighed at the continuation of their adult greetings. Maybe he thought that was boring stuff. Q snickered softly while giving Darren a small shove with his shoulder. It brought some liveliness back and got Darren to smile. Mom noticed the cluster of kids then. Her eyes fell on you and her conversation with the teacher stopped. Reed, I made it. And hello again, Q. Hi, Mom. Hi. She strolled further into the room to join you. Mrs. Murray stayed by the door. Who is the rest of this fun bunch? Mum asked wonderingly, glancing across the faces of the other three kids still there. Q was long over. Class was long over, and you were too closely gathered for it to be random people who happened to be in the same place. Why you'd all come together was a great interest to your mum. Two of those people were Q's friends. One was your seatmate and your neighbour and your friend. And it was her, as usual, who first shot out a reply. Tamarack never took long to think of what she'd say. That's why she was always so far ahead of everyone with words. You're Reed's mum? Wow. You don't look like her, Mum. You'd be surprised. Some bits of me ended up in there. I like looking like me and not looking like her. Yep. A playful smile tugged at your mum's mouth. Tamarack felt inspired to have more curiosities satisfied. Do you look more like your dad? Reed is like him in certain ways. Her smile dropped, but Mum had a reply for that question ready before you had even fully heard it. But our family is me and her. It always has been. He won't come by to visit. She was telling Tamarack the truth. Tamarack wasn't going to see him. You hadn't even met him. You'd only been told stuff about him. When you were younger, Mum said what his race and nationality were, and hers too, so that way you could know your own history. I can enter my race? What? Racial identity? I am very white. Yay! Confirm. Wow. Wait. Add. Oh my god. Hello. This is so crazy. At the same time, your mum explained how having you in the first place worked. She didn't have a husband or boyfriend or anything, but she was the kid, so she had you. Mum talked about how she didn't need an entire other person to have a baby. It only took a small part, and she was able to go get that from a special hospital. It was kind of confusing, but you were able to understand that whoever your dad was, he wasn't your parent. He was a guy Mom didn't know, and you didn't know. You like that? It was just the two of you. Someone else would have gotten in the way of everything. Your mum was already the best. Oh, okay, sorry. Frowning, Tamarack pinched and pulled at the frayed edge of her sweater sleeve. One finger slipped through a tiny hole in the cuff. It was going to rip even more doing that. That might have been why it was torn in the first place. It's fine. You know, now you do. There was a lot of not knowing for her, I knew, but you did recognize the tone your mum was using on Tamarack. A low voice with an extra emphasized bend to the words. It meant, I'm not mad this time, because it won't happen again, isn't that right? Tamarack gave a tiny nod, stretching the striped sleeve all the way past her tips of the fingers on her free hand. Oh, she looked so sad. The conversation had been dominated by Tamarack, but still hanging around was the boys' club. They could hear everything said about your family. He tried to figure out their reaction. Q was still, besides shifting a narrowed gaze between the friend on his left and the one on his right. Suddenly, he seemed like the teacher of the classroom, keeping a stern eye on the students for any sign of trouble. The two of them were on their best behavior, quiet and blank-faced. When Q realized you were watching, he became regular old Q again, grinning wide. Well, it's good to meet you, Tamarack. That dropped Tamarack's jaw. She was certain she hadn't said her name yet. You knew me? Not for sure, but I thought you looked like you'd be your neighbor, Tamarack. Now bashful, Tamarack hid her face with her hands. The sweater was finally released from her squeezing grip. While she wasn't looking, Mum gave you a sneaky wink. You told her enough about yesterday for her to figure it out. What about everyone else? The question was kind of forced. There was still an awkward feeling left behind after Tamarack bringing up your dad that you never met. But that was something they were going to figure out sooner or later. So, after all, it was kind of good they got settled with everybody at once. And Baxter took the initiative, properly introducing himself. My name is Baxter. I don't go to this school. I attend Jarrett Witt Academy. You do? That's quite impressive. Thank you. He was starting to think he couldn't feel uncomfortable even if he wanted to. He was a cool cucumber, so much he got stuck that way, like if you made a weird face for too long. Except you were pretty sure adults were lying when they said that could happen. You got the conversation to change though. Your mum was more at ease and gave a purposeful look at the only kid who hadn't spoken yet. And you are? I'm Darren, that's my mum. Darren couldn't meet her eyes. Instead, he set out his shoes and limply lifted an arm towards the door. Mrs. Murray was leaning against the wall there. Her arms were patiently folded. Mum shifted her gaze between the group of students and the teacher with a big smile. As a mum, she liked seeing other parents with their kids. It was fun for her, you guessed. It's nice to meet you too, Darren. His cheeks puffed out frog-like. It was so fast and unexpected, Mum laughed. She usually didn't like laughing at other people's kids or other adults, not unless they were for telling a joke. She laughed at everyone's jokes, even ones that weren't funny. Mum pressed her palm against her chest and breathed in through her nose to steady herself. You've barely been here 2 days and I already need almost a full hand to count all the acquaintances you have. You work fast. She tilted a grin your way, raising one eyebrow higher. Are you ready to go? Mum, me and Tamarack were wondering if she could come with us. Certainly. I'd be happy to bring her back. Mum stayed put despite that agreement. She was unsure, not about you or Tamarack, but the 3 other kids who were left. That was when Mrs. Murray got off her perch and came to stand by her son. I'm driving Darren, Q, and Baxter to my house. I'll call the boys' parents to let them know. Seems you've all arranged everything. You've got your bags all ready too. We should really be going then. Have a good day, boys. With a parting smile and a gesture of her hand to follow, Mum already walked away. Bye. Q and Baxter said bye as the 3 of you were leaving and waved too. Darren only looked at the big group of girls. Bye Darren, bye Baxter, bye teacher. She shouted over her shoulder while sticking close to you and Mum. And after that yell, Tamarack whispered just to you, "Sorry again. You don't have to feel bad." Oh. Mum held the door open for you and Tamarack to trot by. Then she followed you out. I think I'm gonna end it here. I, again, don't know how long the demo is. It seems very long for a demo. But, yeah. So, next video will probably be up next week. Which, yep. Yeah. I don't know what to think about Darren. He does have that, like, sort of prepubescent boy, oh, I don't like girls thing going on. But, like, I don't know. Alright, well, that's it. Yeah. Goodbye.